A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I am Chamberlain, Uso.
Well, rise and shine. It's a beautiful Monday morning, start of a new week. You're welcome to Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikele.
Why do I suspect that Chamberlain has had something over the weekend and he's just showing it off this morning? It's the 21st day in the month of November, the first Monday in the World Cup. And I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and welcome.
The first what?
Yes, Monday, yeah.
Oh, so he's counting Mondays now. Well, not to worry. I'll show you much later in the studios in a moment. Just keeping our fingers crossed about that one. But yeah, speaking about the World Cup and the Monday and the World Cup, I know, look, Mondays and World Cups, you know, now when you talk about Mondays, it's work day, and so mindsets. That's why you hear so many people wait or can't wait until it's a Friday so they can TGIF, as it were. But, you know, speaking about this World Cup, I don't know if it's just me, guys, or that buzz, you know, that narrative would have been there. I don't know if it's missing or what is it with this World Cup. Okay, well, I know Nigeria is not there. But, of course, you know, football lovers, you always want to watch whatever happens because that's a way a lot of people get to let out steam, especially when your team is not playing, no palpitations. Maybe Ayo can also have a sneak peek because blood pressure won't go that high, I reckon. So it's something that, who knows, maybe with time, if the World Cup fever will catch on slowly. But you can imagine how much we're losing now, commercially speaking, concerning because of us not being at that tournament. But it's not devoid of its own share of controversies in the media. It always will be, I reckon.
Well, if you want to go first, because
I mean, this is not live football. Nigeria is not even participating. You can be a part of this. Why are you running away? But, you know, it's quite interesting, really, Chamberlain. Yes, people will say it's not like it used to be. On the one level, Nigeria is not participating, right? So there's that hurts, naturally. Because whether you like it or not, even if it's a small competition, as far as you have that green, white, green representation, you will always want to be a part of it. So yes, on that level. But secondly, it's a first on a lot of levels. I mean, it's a first in the region. And that's not a region that is known for football, if I can say prowess. I mean, if you talk about football, you think about Nigeria, right? Allow me to sneak in Nigeria. But I mean, you think about Europe and all of that's the big leagues in the world. So for the Middle East, it's not quite a big football region. They're trying to build towards it, definitely. I mean, look at how much they spent. Over $200 billion over the space of 10 years.
something billion, yeah.
Imagine
is it 239?
Over $200 billion. I mean, that just gives you the mindset. It helps you understand how much has been put into this. Whether or not, I mean, it will be justified eventually is another ball game entirely. But it's a tricky thing for people, really. It's a first on many levels, and it's maybe people approaching it with caution. I mean, you saw the first game. We're going to talk about that definitely, but it's understandable. As you said, maybe we'll catch on when we begin to see other games. Naturally, I mean, the World Cup is the World Cup. Even if it's holding deep in the water, it is still the World Cup.
Even despite all of the controversies that Chamberlain mentioned that, you know, trailed it before, you know, its final takeoff, which controversy was crowned with the comments of the president of FIFA and all of that. But you see, one other thing, Chamberlain, that's either missing or not as prominent as it used to be is that theme song. Yeah, I was looking out for that one. The theme song of the World Cup. I was looking out for, you know, there's a way it comes out. You know, I can't forget the waving flag of 2010, Shakira's.
Yes, so that was the official, Shakira's version
was the official one.
Waving flag was like was like our own version. Really.
Seems like, man, that is our own. That version is, you know, it's like when an artist says, this is the hit track in my album. Meanwhile, the media chooses another one altogether. So that happened. So that's a first. I mean, it's either not there or not as prominent. And as you said, Kayode, it's the first in the region as well. And there are those who are commending Morgan Freeman's opening, calling it about the most emotional of all and all of that. But you see, it couldn't have been out of place, Chamberlain, when you recognize that a lot of controversies that went ahead of it is quite something that the human rights community is very, very concerned about. perhaps rightly so. Whether or not, well, it raises its own issues. Those issues will be discussed at the relevant places. But whether or not it'll address the buzz, I guess that's another thing altogether, because World Cup is World Cup.
We just want to play football.
Come on,
play
man.
football and just
it's the
enjoy
biggest,
the game. That's all.
If you listen to Morgan Freeman, it's the biggest thing. It's the most uniting thing for the whole world. So whether you love soccer or you don't love soccer, man, you just want to. It's World Cup.
Football.
Okay, it's football.
Yes,
so whether you like it or you don't like it, call it soccer, call it football, call it whatever it is you want to call it, it is football. Right. And it's the most popular game in the world. The buzz notwithstanding, it'll grow over time. Whether you have a role to play in it or not, it'll grow. The commercial values notwithstanding, everything else that goes with it notwithstanding, it is the World Cup. It's the biggest sports fiesta in the world. Whether we like it or not, that buzz is not going to go away, irrespective of whatever anyone is saying. Well, for now, at least, that's one way to look at it, Chamberlain.
Well, I don't know why I have this feeling that some of that disappointment of us not being at the World Cup, Nigerians will now say, okay, well, since we won't be there, we'll take out our frustrations on these politicians. So,
which is a good thing. Let's focus.
We'll focus on their campaigns. We'll look at everything with a fine-tooth comb. And even what may not be important, we'll talk about it. And everybody just, well, who knows if that would be the case. But, yeah, it will be one of those interesting times, I tell you. But speaking about the elections, let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the dailies and see what they reflect today. Welcome back. Let's take you through some of the dailies. We'll start with the Guardian newspaper today. Look at the big lead on the front page here. Next government, well, they're looking ahead already. Next government to inherit 71.5 trillion naira debts, liabilities after May 29. That's the inauguration day. Look at the riders now. FG blames oil thefts for massive borrowing. Okay, wait a minute. This comes across as though they're saying, well, there was nothing we could do about the thefts. They just kept on stealing, left us with nothing. We had no choice than to borrow. Is that the case? Well, I said that's the way it comes across. So perhaps you could tell us how it comes across to you. Look at the other rider. Economists prescribe securitization for flexible repayment, urge government to pursue growth policies. There is there is so much corruption in bureaucratic processes, says Tommy. So this has always been a thing. I think it's also connected to some of the narratives concerning the rationale behind the Oronsanyi report. Yeah, it may be gathering dust somewhere, even though many thought it was dusted for a bit and they thought it was going to eventually see the light of day, but I think it's back in the shelves. Well, that's because it's not been implemented. If it's not there, where else is it? So if you can't see it being implemented, you only suggest that it's in one place, maybe gathering dust. Well, that is the big lead on the front page here Again, Kwankwaso rules out NNPP merger with LP. So you can go ahead and see that one for yourself. So there's several others, but that is the big lead on the front page of the Guardian newspaper today.
Well, the big lead on the front page of this Nigeria is on politics. That's right. Politics leads this morning. You see PDP crisis worsens as G5 governors dig deeper. Hold enlarged strategy meeting in Lagos. Yes, Lagos was quite busy past few days over the weekend. You see now called Integrity Group says it is still open to reconciliation. So the G5 is now the Integrity Group. I've heard a few people call it 5G. I know, that's network.
Actually, it's a natural thing anyone you would think about.
You know, you just
it's
mix it
5G, 5 governors.
Okay.
But so what does G5 mean? Governors 5?
Now it's Integrity Group, and you know how these things work. We had it we had it in times past too, in the PDP. You know, some governors moving out, calling themselves G5 as well, and now it's G5 morphed into Integrity Group. But that's the lead for this Nigeria.
I mean, it's IG now. I'm just saying.
Wow. Okay, if you like that, no problem. But there's the IGP already. This is IG, Integrity Group. But the picture there shows the World Cup lighting up Qatar. I mean, we talked about that. We're definitely going to be analyzing that for you during the course of the program. It's a big one, definitely. But, you know, this one ties back to that lead on the front page of The Guardian, and it's on top of the front page of this Nigeria. You see, FG took 2.94 trillion naira loan in 11 months, DMO reveals. I mean, the loan conversation is always controversial, whichever way you look at it, definitely. And I think what would help maybe is transparency and accountability in the whole process. I know loans have different clauses. I don't know if it's non-disclosure, but hey, taking loans for Nigeria, right? For Nigerians, for future generation. So I think that transparency and accountability should also be the big part of this conversation. Yes, we can see the figures. 100 trillions, 200. But more importantly, I think for me is transparency and accountability.
I go back to, I still say this from time to time when I think about it. The government that communicated the most with Nigerians, to the best of my knowledge, if memory serves me right, that I think has communicated most, with Nigerians, was the IBB government. No matter what government was going to do.
That's ironic, right?
Yeah, it was such an irony.
Military government.
No matter what government was going to do, the government may have made up its mind we're going to do this. If people said no, it's okay, why? They're going to get all the things, we're going to do it. How may be different, but it's going to be done.
Is it that you're not, I mean, have you factored in the recent governments we've had in Nigeria?
I maintain that, my own thinking, because if there was communication, there would be a buy-in.
A buy-in.
And I think that's what's been missing largely. So this issue that you're raising about, getting loans and all, we're going to do it. We need to do it. Fine. Why?
Then for what?
For what?
Then there needs to be that trust as well.
I mean, for instance, some people calculated that we have repatriated something in the region of $300 million, $300 billion from the Abacha loot.
A billion would shock me.
I don't know.
Billion would be... What?
It will be. I don't know whether it's a million or billion. I don't quite know which of them now. But there are those who are questioning what have we done with those over the past 20 years. So those are issues that will raise the questions around why take loans when we had these.
And I think it's a no-brainer, the issue of just laying it out there, the information. And I think that speaks to that story on the front page as well. Payment of 13% derivation. How did you spend the funds? That's a question there. You're wondering who's asking that question. Well, I know the governor of River State spoke about his own and was asking, and how did other governors spend theirs? And you see, citizens demand explanation from Niger Delta governors, accuse them of keeping sealed lips over jumbo package. I think we should normalize having these information out there. Just people don't have to ask for it. I think it's just normal, right? Well, put it out there, let's see.
Maybe it's because the legislature knew that it's not normal to put out such information, so FOI bill or FOI law.
FOI law. Mm-hmm. Oh, Lord. Let's go there. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria this morning.
Well, The most information we have are on the front pages of the papers, and Daily Independent has its own fair share this morning. Fresh rate hike, food inflation may worsen economic woes. Well, this kind of somehow tapers into the lead of the Guardian newspaper and that sub-lead of this Nigerian newspaper. The details, of course, you find on the front page, continues on the inside pages. More on that under the picture on the front page, how 15 years tax moratorium for Ethiopian Airlines stopped Nigeria Air. Does that mean it stopped? Well, angry AO and others insist on level playing field. Find the details of that continue on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Several other stories. 133 million poor Nigerians, Serap asks Buhari to probe spending on social safety nets. Like another way of asking those questions you were asking the other time. That's the Daily Independent this morning.
You know, speaking about airlines and travel, guys, I mean, perhaps we should remember that presidential steering committee that usually meets and talk about COVID, and possibly the NCDC as well. Now, what's going on? They appear to have forgotten, or are we still dealing or grappling with COVID? Are those measures still in place? Because before you board and come to Nigeria, if you're outside the country, you are required to upload a health certificate till date concerning COVID. So lots of people still wondering, they're asking, what's going on? They need information. Why is that still there? Because several other requirements for several other countries are gone, long gone. So what's going on with us? So maybe they need to tell us something. Why is that still there? Has somebody forgotten about it? So if the committee is not speaking, perhaps NCDC, both of them should have a handshake and let Nigerians know what the situation is, as opposed to leaving them confused about what our real situation is. So, hoping that they'll listen to that one. And then let's go ahead and take a look at Daily Times today, 2023. That's what they're also focusing on. Why I won't step down for anybody. Ponkoso, that's a big one on the front page here, insists anybody who says 2023 is his turn is making a huge mistake. Says only visionary leaders can restructure Nigeria. So that word pops up again, restructure. I know it means different things to different people. So, and who knows, whoever will give you their own definition of what restructuring meant. And then many people will say, look, whatever that meant, this is not what, there will always be that one. So look at this at the bottom strip, equally important. No underage person will vote in 2023, INEC insists. Pledges to probe confirmed infractions in voters' register, which is, of course, raising a lot of eyebrow. A lot needs to be done to clean up that register. I mean, we've been voting for how long now? So whatever happens to ensuring that that register, those kind of names don't even show up in the first place. Now, who were those that allowed that registration to happen? Who presided over those registrations? Are they still with the commission? Where are they? What's happening? How do we know this is not the first phase of an agenda of what's going to go on? Because, look, politicians will stop at nothing to ensure they have their way. Because if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. That's why we have checks and balances. Humans will naturally do what you expect them to do. So we need to ensure that we are on our toes on this one and keep INEC on its toes as well, because that now will be a huge place where lots could go right or wrong, depending on how you look at it. That is Daily Times this morning, guys.
All right, up next is, you know, I had to fall for this temptation, Abuja Inquirer. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. So I'm taking Abuja Inquirer next. And it's good you raised that issue about the health, certificate and all of that before you get into Nigeria. It just raises, avenues for people to engage in sharp practices. And I think, as you said, let's wake up and stop all of this. I mean, our airports are rated one of the lowest because of these issues. I mean, you have nations who have moved on since, and we still have these things there, being a clog in the wheel and bringing what embarrassment to our nation. Abuja Inquirer talks about health, interestingly. Says, our plans to halt doctors fleeing Nigeria, UK envoy. What? Did I read that right? Well, I'm not a doctor, but I imagine some people thinking, can you just hold on to this? Let's just resolve mine, then you can start it off. But this raises a major issue, honestly. The brain drain, which some have described as brain gain, in terms of the, the remittance, the diaspora remittance and all of that. But this is a big one. I had to take it because it's a major one for our health sector. And I'll just take one more for you. You see, Buhari to supervise first oil drill in the north on Tuesday. So it's been a long time coming, this one. I imagine it's a big one, spanning over 2 states, I imagine. But more details on the inside pages of Abuja Inquirer. A couple more stories.
While that makes sense, yeah. I hope the president would, the northern governors or government would do what Ghana did. Think about the propensity to create more poverty around an oil-producing state.
Seeing what we have experienced in
Niger Delta. I hope that is part of the thinking, because the poverty rate in the north is horrendous already.
Yeah.
Already. So to put an oil rig or oil installation there, will it help make life better for the people, or improve, rather make worse the already bad poverty situation? I hope that is also part of the long-term thinking.
The advice I have in addition to that is, don't actually rely on all of this exploration and all of that. I mean, we've had oil in Nigeria for how long?
Since 1956.
And we're still at this point, remove subsidy or not. How much have we made? Oil theft and all of that. I think we should actually prepare for a future without oil. Yes, oil can always add to it, but let's be honest. There are nations that don't have any single drop of oil, and they're doing fantastically well.
I'm wondering, what does Dubai have now?
Oil, actually.
Dubai?
Yeah.
Oh, they have oil. Oh, really?
And sand.
And sand.
Tourist attraction.
Okay.
That's the Abuja Inquirer.
Let's see what the Vanguard newspaper has on its front page this morning. How politicians still threaten credible polls ascribed to INEC source. Well, apparently this INEC source has a concealed name. IREV, Ratex will check rigging. How Nigerians can key in. Immediate access to uploaded polling units results by voters is key. What voters must know and do to navigate the IRF sphere. Patriotic INEC staff averted rigging plot in Anambra governorship poll. Well, we have patriotic and we have unpatriotic. All of that you'll find the details on page 5 of the paper this morning. Under the picture, of course, you know what the picture is about. Qatar 2022. Qatar World Cup opens with fanfare despite criticisms. Find the story on page 39. PDP crisis. We're still open to reconciliation, say G5 governors. Others. What?
In politics, reconciliation means something. Oh, goodness. If you try to check dictionary for the meaning of reconciliation, I think that's what's being referred to here.
No, you are so correct, because I remember an interview we had with the governor of River State, Governor Wike. Said, NDDC should carry along the northern... When you say carry along,
it means something else.
In politics, it means something else. I was like, uh-oh. Chipole was laughing at me that day. That's not fair, man.
Politics
anyway,
101.
But anyway, that's the details of that you'll find on page 9 of the paper this morning. Several pictures, as you can see on the front page. Stop hallucinating. You have no mandate to retrieve. Adeleke tells Oyetola. The details you'll find on page 10. Of course, what do you have on the back page? Sports. 7 Nigerian-born stars at the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Nigeria is not there, but Nigerians are there. So that's a good one. Ecuador beat Qatar in World Cup opener. Qatar 0, Ecuador 2. More on that, as you've heard us say. Mr. and Mrs. very quickly. It's a very interesting one. Mrs. helping Mr. to adjust his tie as he is about to head to the work. Telling Mr., don't forget to tell your boss that your salary is too small and you need a new car. I need to put a note in your pocket to remind you. Mr. says, there's no need. I'll give you his phone number. That's... I
promise you Mrs. will call.
Yes, Mrs. will call, but what circumstances and conditions might follow, I don't even want to imagine that. That's the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Well, good morning and welcome once again to Abuja. I'm looking at New Telegraph for you this morning. PDP crisis, G5 governors, George, others meet. Float integrity group. Say window for reconciliation remains open. We're face of the struggle. Our leaders here are backing us, as attributed to Makinde. That's interesting. It gets more interesting. They said they are the face of the struggle. Okay? You also have there 2023 cabal military officers lobby to replace service chiefs. Posts with $1 million. CSO alleges. What? Okay. You'll find details on page 6 of the paper. $1 million. Is that lucrative? Wow. Just look on top of the nameplate. CBN banks credit to economy rise 33.45% to 63.48 trillion naira. And man, federal government's 20% tax threatens carbonated drink sector's survival. Okay, that's also another thing to consider. Federal government has been trying to introduce this sugar tax so as to reduce the consumption of carbonated drinks. But when you also look at that sector itself, you have to ask, how are they doing? Are they doing very well? Is it the consumption of those types of sugars that is causing an increase in diabetes in our society? Or is it the food that we're eating? You know, well, I'm sure that they must have thought about a lot of things before they introduced the 20% carbonated drinks tax or sugar tax, because it's not just carbonated drinks, it's affecting any product that makes a great deal of sugar.
I see.
Yeah, so it's something to certainly consider. Page 18 is where you get details. We'll leave it there for New Telegraph.
Yeah, that ends a look at some of the dailies this morning on Sunrise Daily. We will be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
The launch of the Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index is bringing together top government officials, development partners, and key players in the economic sector to put forward the findings of the survey. The survey, which sampled over 56,000 households across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, conducted between November 2021 and February 2022, states that 65% of poor Nigerians, representing 86 million people, live in the north, while 35%, nearly 47 million, live in the south.
While the monetary measurement of poverty makes use of consumption expenditure as a means of determining the level of poverty, the MPI approach uses deprivation in basic amenities as a means of determining the level of poverty.
At the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, we will continue to play our oversight role as the government's institution tasked with policy and project designs, as well as the monitoring and evaluation of projects. In this context, the MPI will be used to systematically track progress against the Sustainable Development Goal 1.
The measure used to calculate the figure was based on the Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index, MPI, and contains 5 components: health, living standard, education, security, and underemployment. While the report identifies Sokoto State as having the most poverty levels across states with 91% and Ondo with the lowest at 27%, children, women, and persons living with disabilities are worst hit. The figures come with concerns from development partners.
We need to understand poverty as a phenomenon that is affecting children in different ways, whether it is monetary or multidimensional.
However, the federal government says more investments will be made to change the narrative.
This is a report that pinpoints the level of deprivations and its intensity that confronts our citizens, all of them. Beyond this, it also provides substantive evidence of the positive impact of the multi-sectoral interventions of the Buhari administration, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, which also demonstrated our commitment to eradicating extreme poverty in Nigeria.
The survey is then launched. This is expected to serve as a wake-up call to the government on how to allocate its resources and provide policies that will address the gaps identified.
All right, welcome back. So we'll take a look at that and then how the political parties intend to alleviate poverty. What is their poverty reduction plan? Okay, sorry, just getting distracted. All right, so we do have Olumide Braithwaite, who is a member of the Media and Publicity Committee of the Tinubu Shetima Grassroots Independent Campaign Council. They call it the ICC. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today. So what is it with this? I mean, it could be confusing, the ICC and the PCC. So how do they function?
Okay, so the Presidential Campaign Council was flagged off at the Villa, I think a few weeks ago. It also coincided with the party manifesto of our party candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The ICC is, as the name implies, is the Independent Campaign Council for the grassroots. It's a novel structure that works in tandem with the PCC.
Okay, so I was going to ask, why do you need an independent council, and do you work with, so now that you say they work with the PCC, it means you check your notes, you take notes, you ensure that you're on the same page.
Absolutely.
In terms of the manifesto, the message design, the objectives of the campaign, and the narratives you put out.
Yes.
Literally on the same page.
Absolutely. What the ICC and this particular structure does is to transmit the message to the rural areas. Right to the grassroots. We intend to go door to door with implementation and distribution of materials and the message to rural areas in their dialects. We intend to set up in each state, in each of the 36 states and the FCT, media centers with a structure with supervisors and state coordinators. Something that's never been done before. We believe when we have in this structure, we have the former Deputy Governor of Nasarawa State, Mr. Silas Agara, as our national coordinator. Our media department is full of technocrats, top people in their field, and headed by Iliad Ntufam Etta. We believe that with this what I call a revolutionary setup, we're going to get that message across to.
Speaking about the grassroots, which is where you want to focus on to ensure that messages get across to them, they have taken a lot of hit. The multidimensional poverty index, which was released last week, you saw those figures. 133 million Nigerians are poor. That's a higher rate than previously, over 60%. And they say of that figure, 51% of them are children, largely in the rural areas, the areas that you're taking your campaigns to, the grassroots. And then it's a lot more worrisome when people can't reconcile it. Maybe you'll help us out, especially when they look and see figures such as FG budgeting 863 billion naira in poverty reduction and social intervention program. And then if you just cast your mind back when the government spent about 999 million naira daily for approximately 10 million pupils on that school feeding program. So when you look at those figures, and then you look at this multidimensional poverty index, it's difficult to reconcile those figures. So this MPI, many say, this is our stark reality. So how do we then juxtapose what is budgeted, what is spent, and this figure coming through from the MBS?
Thank you very much. The MBS for a long time has been underfunded. And so we have not been able to have accurate figures and statistics in recent times. The recently released report has come about as a result of increased funding. And as you said, it is what it is. It's a stark reality. For the incoming government, the priority has to be to use those figures in a way that would alleviate suffering for the poor, for the poor families, and to be able to make policy reforms in order to accommodate that. Having said that, of course, the economy is facing huge challenges at this time. The naira, the forex rate, the lack of security, the oil theft, the insecurity globally, insecurity internally, the Ukraine-Russian war, all these are factors. And our situation has been exacerbated by the stark reality that our fiscal policies, our macroeconomics don't add up. And, you know, the message that our candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is bringing is one of reform.
So, but that is an admission that in the last 7 years, we've not been able to ensure that those figures add up.
Listen, the economy has not been in a worse situation than it is now since 1983. The second quarter growth in 2021 was 1.5% more than it is at this rate. It's about 3.5% now, as opposed to last year. And our economy has never been in a worse state for the past 4 decades. And that's the reality that we're facing today with so many issues at stake.
Well, even before before COVID, because part of the reason why the MBS decided to do this study was because of COVID, to see
Correct.
what effect COVID was going to have. But even before COVID, in 2019, the president had promised to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. It meant that he understood that a lot of Nigerians were poor. I mean, he wanted to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over the next 10 years. So people said, oh, it means that on an average, it means that you're targeting at least 10 million Nigerians out of poverty on a yearly basis if you're going to be lifting 100 million of them. From what we now see, because part of the campaign promises of the APC when it was coming into power was to fight corruption, do something about the economy, and also tackle security. From one of the biggest plans we were seeing was something along the lines of the social welfare programs. And a lot of people felt that it had the power to be able to lift Nigerians out of poverty, especially since it was going to be tailored to the grassroots. Now, from what we see, it is difficult to measure whether there's been any impact whatsoever from what the federal government has spent on poverty alleviation through those social programs, vis-a-vis what we now have on ground as measured by the MBS, especially after COVID. Would you say that there's been a mismatch of resources vis-a-vis the problems on the ground, maybe not fully understanding it before we now even decided to target tackling poverty?
It's a very informed question. The situation is very complex. Needless to say that some of our problems has been the implementation. Let's take the budget, for example. The budget I would consider to be reasonable. It's not over optimistic, let's say, in which case you would have to have policy statements in order to justify some of the expenditure. But where you have provision for deficit, and how you manage that is through borrowing, correct? The incoming government therefore needs to put in place an environment that creates confidence, reduces risk exposure, attracts foreign investment, and all of this has to be transparent. You have to have an atmosphere of transparency, which would create confidence in the entire system. I would concede to some extent your notion that there is an imbalance there. And this is where I feel that our candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has the relevant experience with an economy of Lagos State, which is still the largest economy in Nigeria. And by extension, this is why I feel that he is perhaps the most competent candidate to get us out of this rut. And I sincerely believe that that will come to bear.
When you talk about a rut, if people have to remind you that your party is still in power at the center, and if there is a rot, I mean, it still has a responsibility to clean it. But, and this is not just people now. We have a social, well, I say a non-governmental organization, SERAP, is asking the federal government to probe, in fact, more precisely, the president, to probe the spending on social intervention programs. Because just as I highlighted earlier, people are wondering how it is that we could have spent so much trying to lift people out of poverty, and it doesn't look like we have any measurable results. They are saying promptly set up a presidential panel of inquiry to thoroughly, impartially, effectively, and transparently investigate spending on all social safety net and poverty alleviation programs and projects executed between 2015 and 2022. Is this something that you support?
Anything that will support transparency and rid Nigeria of this tag of corruption should be embraced.
You think that there's been corruption in the implementation of some of these programs?
I didn't say anything of that sort, but I do know where you are alluding to.
I'm just asking. I mean, it's a question. You say anything to support the removal of corruption.
Yes, but you have to ask me a question relative to the background of the information that you've just given me. But certainly, I didn't make any admission to that effect. But we are all Nigerians, and we know that we have this corruption tag, and it needs to be addressed. And I believe again that the person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu has a mission for his legacy, and this is a priority and has to be a priority for any government that's coming into power in 2023.
Have you heard the opposition party and how the major opposition party and how they're interpreting this? They said, oh, the APC said they want to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. And what they succeeded in doing was dragging 133 million Nigerians into poverty. How is your party responding to this?
If we are looking at mudslinging in politics, it's as old as the hills. The other side, or another perspective of that reality, is to look at the PDP as having 16 years since our return to democracy in 1999, and has steadily declined the fortunes of this country. Our government, the APC, was voted in by Nigerians because of the colossal corruption and mismanagement of that party. And what's happening today is we shouldn't really concentrate too much on distractions. We really should focus on issues, because we are at the precipice of very, very peculiar times in Nigeria. And all of us are stakeholders, and we have to cast our votes for
You said don't focus too much on distractions and focus on the issues. The issue at hand is that 133 million Nigerians are poor. Yes. And your party is at the helm of affairs. Yeah. And you have made grand promises, and it doesn't look like from the figures that you have delivered. If the opposition party is taking you to task on that, these are the issues.
Well, you say the opposition party. Let's not forget that there's not one opposition party. There's several parties.
Indeed.
So you have to be case specific. What I'm trying to say is that let's look at the issues. The issues are not just poverty. We have insecurity. We have unemployment. We have our universities that have been closed. We have debts. We have multiple challenges. And these are the things that our candidate has been addressing.
All under the watch of the ruling party, your party. So, who do we blame for that?
As I said, I would rather concentrate on salvaging the fortunes of this country rather than laying blame.
Because, I mean...
That is not the solution at this point.
Okay, in other words, I mean, when your party goes out to campaign, they need to focus, they need to take your advice, because we hear them still blame the opposition, which left power 7 years ago, and it'll be 8 years soon. So that perhaps is what you're talking about. They need to focus on what the issue is and not keep going back to 7 years ago.
It depends how you want to look at this thing.
I'm looking at it the way you said it.
Well, I could also say conversely that our candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is the only governor since 1999, which was, you have to get I'm a lawyer, I'm not an accountant. It's about, how many years ago? 23
years ago.
And still remains relevant and constant in the affairs of this country.
How so?
How so? Well, he's vying for the presidential seat.
Several other people are vying.
Not any sitting governor from that time.
The governor or former governor or the presidential candidate of the NNPP was a governor in 1999 alongside Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
You could argue in terms of, well, I must give credence to Alhaji Kwakwanso. However, the impact of this on a nationwide basis remains to be seen. We are at an exciting moment in our democratization, and I enjoy all Nigerians to be astute. We're a nation of tremendous potentials, and I believe that the personality, the dynamism, the business savvy of our candidate is what is needed at this time to move us forward.
But do you understand when some Nigerians say that, look, they want to try something else? Especially given what they faced in the last 7 years. They've looked at several promises from your party, from power generation that hasn't met. They looked at the current situation of the economy. Many of them feel a lot could have been done differently. 133 million people now in the poverty net. So it's quite understandable, I reckon, when they say, look, why don't we just try something else? I mean, I also understand that as a ruling party, nobody wants to lose. No party wants to lose election. But when people say, look, from what they currently face, they would like to try something else. How does that sit with you?
That is a very reasonable and normal assumption, given the facts that we've been discussing on this program. It was change that brought about a change in political parties. In as much as the APC has been in government for the last 7 years, a new dawn also beckons in terms of the personality that would be manning this government, and not just that, the team, the personalities that are surrounding this movement are such that are capable, more so motivated towards achieving positive change.
But, all right, I understand we need to go to break soon, but at the moment, what kind of conversation goes on within the party in terms of what specific plans? Is there any such thing as a magic bullet to get this economy back on its feet from your party's plans?
I don't think there is a magic bullet, as you put it. But I think policy reforms have to be a priority. That has to be accompanied by the management of our fiscal policies. It has to permeate into the application against a huge population that we have. Again, I think that the manifesto talking about economic reforms and some of the plans that were unfolding that have addressed some of those issues.
All right, we'll look at some more specifics and bring other parties into this conversation when we return in just a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, let's bring in our colleagues in Lagos. They do have questions for you, Mr. Braithwaite. Go ahead, guys.
All right, thank you, Chamberlain. Just listening to, the conversation over the past couple of minutes, I sense that it's a bit difficult, really, going through this terrain, because for a lot of Nigerians, they see the figures, the poverty figures, 133 million under the watch of this government, yet your party is asking for another 4 years through the presidential candidate of your party. And it's difficult. I sense that even in the way you approach the questions. But Nigerians, you will have to face it nonetheless. And I'd like you to speak to Nigerians, maybe another chance to get them to at least maybe see from your side why you think they should give your party another chance, seeing the figures, the poverty figures in particular. So if you could speak to Nigerians regarding that. They have seen 133 million people in poverty. Don't forget, in 2019, the poverty index showed 82.9 million Nigerians. In 2022, the multidimensional poverty index is showing 133 million. So speak to Nigerians. Why, seeing that figure, they should still cast the ballot for your party?
Thank you very much for that. It's relevant. I did give a background for the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics that has been largely unfunded. Those figures don't come as a surprise. Those figures, as compared to the figure that you just mentioned of 89 million, isn't accurate or wasn't accurate at the time because of funding. And what our candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is going to do with those figures is going to make provision. For example, the US government, by law, is the largest contractor in the world. And between 10 to 20% of the budget is provided to accommodate small and medium-sized businesses by law. Therefore, the ripple effect would translate into more jobs for unskilled workers in the job market. The legacy, or rather the record of our candidate in Lagos State, which is the largest economy in Nigeria, speaks for itself. Despite several constraints, he was able to revolutionize the IGP and massive infrastructural development. He is by far the most qualified in terms of international posture when we want to access international concessions, and possesses a wealth of experience needed at this time. It is okay for the opposition to lay the blame squarely at the feet of this government, because the truth of the matter is they are equally, if not more, by the mere fact of duration of time spent in government, mismanaging the fortunes of this country, accumulated over time. And these were some of the issues that this government inherited. Let's not forget that. And so we stand by our confidence in Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's competence and wisdom, to be able to fashion programs to get us out of this economic
there are countless questions, Mr. Braithwaite, around the issues that you have raised. I mean, one could go on how the government has collaborated with states in getting some of those things done that the government perhaps intended to do. But we'll talk about that perhaps in the course of time. In the meantime, Adedeji Doherty also joins us this morning. He is chairman at Atiku Okowa Presidential Campaign Council in Lagos, and he is also a former governorship aspirant. He joins us virtually. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Doherty. Let me assume that you have been listening to Mr. Braithwaite all the while, and perhaps may want to respond to a thing or two. But then you may begin by answering the question that he has raised, that whatever economic woes Nigerians are suffering now, the foundation was laid by your party before 2015. Mr. Doherty, can you hear me? Okay, I guess we'll continue with Mr. Braithwaite in the meantime. So let me bring that question to you again about the fact that the president said that back in 2019 that my colleague responded to, alluded to earlier when she asked a question in 2019, that in collaboration with states, the federal government was going to do everything they could to pull out 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over the spread of 10 years. The question of whether or not it would be done couldn't be done without the states. That was contained in the speech that the president made. The question then is, given that the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria made a statement, unexpectedly all paraphernalia of government, all the machinery of government, ministries, departments, and agencies were supposed to go and follow through in collaboration with states, he said. If your government could not collaborate with states to pull Nigerians out of poverty, what's the assurance we have that the next administration will?
Thank you very much. The assurance lies in our collective burden as Nigerians. This is our only country. We either salvage it or we don't have anywhere else to run to. Let's not lose sight of the fact that we have a global phenomenon going on, and there is insecurity generally everywhere. Our party, and more so our presidential candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has consistently postured himself with the plight of the masses and Nigerians in general, devoid of ethnicity or religious sentiment. He has been magnanimous in his track record towards fulfilling some of the policies that he has introduced. I dare say you can examine some of these records and statistics, and as the transition, as we count down towards the elections, I'm confident that some of these promises, some of these campaign, and they're not slogans, but as enshrined in his manifesto, will be further scrutinized and will be further defended accordingly. And this is the reassurance. This is what Nigerians can take back home because of the personality and the personnel that come as a corporate team, if you like, towards 2023 and the future of this country.
Braithwaite, I'd like you to speak to us specifically now about the issues, because it's mind-boggling to see that in spite of all of the resources we have in this blessed nation called Nigeria, human capital, 200 million people, that alone is enough to trade and do better than others. We have, natural resources as well. And, I could go on and on. Help us understand, does your candidate have a firm grasp of why Nigerians are poor? 133 million, in spite of the policies, the programs of this current government. Clearly, it looks like, throwing money at these things don't work, as we've seen with all these social investment programs and all of that. In spite of that, the poverty persists. So tell us what your candidate has been able to find regarding why Nigerians are poor, specifically now. Why would you say Nigerians are poor in spite of all of this? From the findings of your candidate, as you said, he's had time to study these things.
Well, I think every Nigerian has a right to ask those questions. Certainly, our revenues in recent times have been depleted. with oil theft, rising food costs, food insecurity. Our candidate has already mentioned that he will introduce money lending schemes, credit facilities, in addition to policy changes that would encourage, for example, with the CBN, more transparency in the management and distribution of foreign exchange, using platforms with OMOs, operational money operators, and so on and so forth. I believe that he has the wealth in the commercial aspect to be able to engineer some of these economic programs to get us out of our situation.
One other thing that along that same line, you haven't spoken to the fact that the government couldn't significantly, efficiently partner with states. There are some of them perhaps who have been waiting for this much talked about collaboration that the president promised in that speech. You haven't spoken to that one. The fact that the federal government couldn't work with states. Now, if the current government could not work with states, are there things responsible for that which perhaps your candidate is aware of? What are those things responsible for the fact that that collaboration between the federal government and states could not happen?
Well, I'm not sure which states you're referring to. They could be opposition states. That could be a reason for that, perhaps. But let me flip that a little bit. Lagos State, for example, for many, many years didn't receive any allocations from the federal government. And our candidate was the same governor who still increased and turned around the internally generated revenue of Lagos State by 600%. 600%. So these figures, these are facts. These are historical facts, and you can check them. Should excite Nigerians.
So the local government didn't receive anything that time?
Well, I wouldn't know. I mean,
okay, well, Mr. Doherty, I think he's set for us, so let's try him out. Mr. Doherty, good morning. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Can you hear us, Mr. Doherty? Because we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, well, if you could just respond to this Lagos State big part where he did say that, well, the reasons why he's optimistic and thumping his chest that the candidate of the APC has all it takes, given how he was able to manage the resources of Lagos at the time, and so there shouldn't be any cause for worry. Can you still hear me?
You are breaking. You are breaking.
How about now? Is it any better?
Yeah, a bit better now.
Okay, so compared to what part of, I don't know what part of the conversation you were able to pick up, but what is your party trying to do now, especially with the ruling party saying, well, they want to keep it going because they think they have a better plan than your party?
Well, I'm happy, you know, first of all, I'd like to thank you for bringing me on today. The PDP has always been the custodian of democracy in Nigeria. And as you know it, Chamberlain, the PDP has been, was the one that transited Nigeria into this democracy we're all shouting about. Remember that, you know, in 1998, the PDP took over the helms of affairs of Nigeria. And Olusegun Obasanjo came into the pandemic situation that we had in the country. And he put a team together, which included definitely his running mate, Atiku Abubakar. who was at that time the head of the economy. He was the one that marshaled the economy that the PDP was trying to implement in the country. And remember that during that time, coups by the military was very much in vogue. So, to start up with, you must give the PDP that credence that was able, the party that was able to stabilize democracy in Nigeria. And these two gentlemen were the pioneer members of the PDP that did this job. Having said that, I don't think the All Progressive Congress should even be vying for anything right from the presidential up to the local government right now, especially in Lagos State. Lagos State, everybody, you know, with the gentleman in your studio today, we're all talking about the what do you call it? The local government funds that were withheld. The local government funds were withheld for a particular reason. And at the end of the day, Tinubu, yes, increased the IGR of the state, but at what cost? 1,500 companies went under. I remember Dr. Tuji Baterit of blessed memory. Some of his companies too were definitely affected. And we know that, you know. So I believe that the PDP has already retraced its steps. We have made mistakes along the road to making Nigeria great. And I think it is time we stabilize this country and give this country give PDP another chance to make good its promises that it has always made.
Well, I know that one of the candidates has challenged both parties, all the candidates, as a matter of fact, to a debate, face-to-face debate. Let's go to Lagos. I think I'll call it. Wait a minute. But Mr. Doherty, will your candidate take up that gauntlet? Will he?
You mean the debate?
Yes.
Our candidate does not, you see, Atiku Abubakar, as you know, Chamberlain, come on, you understand. We all have gone through the PDP. You have gone through it, and the whole crew of Channel
TV.
Did you say I have gone through it? Yes, you all interviewed our different candidates at different times.
I get you now.
You understand? Channel TV has been almost as long as democracy.
Okay. Well, let me.
You understand? So definitely our candidate will be there. Definitely.
Okay, that's an admission. How about you? Will your candidate participate in a live televised debate?
Absolutely. Why not? That has been the format, and let me just say that unknown to many Nigerians, Bola Ahmed, Senator Bola Ahmed Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's schedule is grueling. His day starts. His day starts at 10.
All right.
Typically, let me just within the time.
Who hasn't said a thing?
Yes, but you asked me a question, so let me just.
You gotten the answer. You say yes, he will.
Let me just land.
But don't worry, we'll come back to you.
Okay.
But let's go to Lagos. We have a guest there as well. Guys, go ahead.
Thank you, Chamberlain. For a second, I was trying to check my records to say, when did you leave Channels Television for the PDP? I guess that's been laid to rest. Ladipo Johnson joins us this morning. He's spokesman for NNPP, Kwankwaso presidential campaign. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
You saw something on the front page of the paper, and the first thing you're saying, it's going to kill businesses. But then there is one that I'm sure you are aware of that everyone is talking about, the poverty figures. Multi-dimensional poverty. I think that point needs to be made. It's multi-dimensional, but not just poverty, multi-dimensional poverty figures that the federal government released. Exactly what's your thought on that, and what do you think has been left undone that your candidate has in plan?
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, we're where we're at. there's a lot of blaming going on all sides. But the sad fact is that over the years, things have plummeted. I'm talking about the welfare of the people, the state of the economy. Yes, we had the global pandemic, and there are other things that have added to this. But the bottom line is that you try to look at what has been done or been left undone. How do you react to these incidents if you're in government? The first thing I'd like to say is Nigerians have had to tighten their belts several times. I don't see one thing that this government has done to cut its costs. I agree that we have the National Assembly on one side, but even the executive arm, what have they done in the past 7 years to cut the cost of governance?
What do you think should have been done?
I think that government, the perennial buying of vehicles, you look at the budgets every year and you see certain heads that come up with the same thing. Then you see the cost of travel. There are many things. When Rabiu Kwankwaso was governor of Kano, and he said it about a week or so ago, he made that bold statement. He said, for instance, I will not receive any security votes, because he didn't do it when he was governor. So it's just a little thing, a drop in the ocean. Olumide mentioned oil theft and things like that. And those are the major things that have bitten away at the revenue base of the country. That's one side of it. The second side of it is if we do not, and it's the major part of it, if we do not get a hold on the insecurity, then you cannot attract investments. You cannot even, local investments itself. You and I will not be able to go to Zamfara and invest. You can't do that. And when the revenue is not there, you can't even begin to talk about, okay, it's small and medium-sized businesses, or it's going to be the larger corporations.
You also remember that the federal government has talked about the fact that there's a revenue challenge of the federal government.
There has to be.
Okay, so, and you also reference this oil theft, issue of the federal government as well. So, in speaking about the revenue, if you agree that indeed Nigeria has a revenue challenge on our hands, how will your government, the government of your candidate, tackle it?
It's a simple thing. Anyone who is not willing to, or who is unable to face the insecurity problem, now specifically we're talking about oil theft. Tell me that oil theft can occur without a super tanker, for instance, coming into your waters. Just that. Can they come in without the customs and the Nigerian Navy? You understand? So the first thing we're looking at is leadership by example, leading from the front. I keep saying, no matter the genuine intentions that our current president has, we had problems and everyone could see. And for years, he didn't touch his generals or those,
the
service chiefs and everything. So these are the things there. But technology, most importantly, because you tell me that everyone has said the same thing, most importantly, it is leadership from the front, zero tolerance.
Right.
And if you cannot do that, then your government will not, the debt burden is too much.
Your candidate was Minister of Defense at some point.
Yes.
But, let's break this down, really. Let's maybe go back, way back. I'm talking 1999 now. And, I mean, we can tell what a person will do based on what the person has done. They always say, your candidate has been a governor in Nigeria. And, I mean, this poverty conversation is not just the president that will resolve poverty.
Even
I mean,
the states
and local governments have their roles to play. And I know your party, the NNPP, is based on this Talakawa.
For the masses.
For the masses. And, there's this talk out there that poverty in Nigeria is deliberate keeping people in poverty is deliberate because it oils that political machine. You need people who can vote for you, who you can subdue such that, you know, the usual handouts will be enough to get them to vote. So your party is based on that principle. And I'd like maybe to defend or speak for your party, because if people are taken out of poverty, I wonder who the Talakawas, the Talakawas will definitely no more be there to support your party. So,
No.
I mean, some will say maybe that's some sort of contradiction. So speak to that.
That's like saying that if we begin to provide proper electricity, there's those who are selling generators won't be in business. Some people say that.
But will they be in business?
No, but they should go. They should go into some form of other business. Get involved in the electricity, maybe gas or what have you.
It's easy to say what happens to the stock that they've imported. Speak to that. I think it's a very important point.
Really, the bottom line is this. You're right. We have, much like late, let me reference it as well, late Tunji Braithwaite of blessed memory, taking a dig at Olumide here. His father was one who cared about the masses, and I went through his father as well politically at some stage. And we believe that, I think you alluded to the fact that we have a market of 200 million people. I overheard before I came into the studio. And that market has expanded because of the African Continental Free Trade Zone area agreement that we're into. If you really want people to sleep at night, then you have to make sure that even those at the bottom of the ladder, the social ladder, have access to good health, education, etc., etc. So the programs of Kwankwaso, when he was governor, were mostly geared towards ensuring access. At that level, he was involved in free education, free school feeding. They have a peculiar problem in the core north. And for that reason, he had special buses for the girl child, special school uniforms, picking them up, just to encourage people to go to school. So yes, they have that. The problem with, at the moment, is balancing the state of the economy now, the debt burden that we have, with those programs.
So is it to the benefit, pardon me, of the politician to have people lifted out of poverty? That's the question.
No, hang on. It is to the benefit of the average Nigerian. It is to the benefit of the altruistic politician. You see, if you're in government and you've been in government for 7 years or 8 years or 16 years, you should be able to turn to the people and say, see what I've done.
So how is it we have this burden, this huge burden of poverty? In the north, it's even much more.
Yes.
Let's not deceive ourselves. It's all across the country.
Yeah.
But the burden definitely is much more in the north. And we're talking about people, not just figures. People, 133 million. So why is it that you have, I imagine politicians say they are all altruistic, but we still have that poverty rising?
The poverty keeps rising. One, because of what you're alluding to. Most politicians have weaponized poverty. They keep Nigerians in poverty, and from the poverty of the belly, it moves to poverty of the mind. And then when they come out again, like they've done now, they come out, they spend money that has been stolen from government. And then the man who is so hungry begins to look at you. You're not in government, you're approaching them, you're talking about manifestos and everything. They say you're speaking English. Now these people are giving them rice, they're giving them this, they're giving them that. Oh, we can see that there are banners everywhere. How much is one billboard? I agree that campaigning isn't cheap, but that in itself is a horrible, horrible thing.
Let me ask you specifically.
Yeah.
What will your candidate do? Kadi has asked you the question, but let me be a little more specific, more direct. What will your candidate do, who is a northerner, to reduce the poverty figures in the north?
Good. The first thing, as we said, everything now is the issue of insecurity. You do everything together, but the insecurity and security of the country.
Insecurity is enabled by poverty. Security agencies have told
Definitely.
us. So
definitely, we know that.
If we have had poor people in the north all over the years, and it is general, but as the figures, the data has shown us, it's a lot more prevalent in the north.
Yes,
so
in parts of the
what
north.
will your candidate do specifically? What kind of collaborations, what kind of interventions, what kind of policies is he going to initiate that is going to directly, specifically address poverty figures in the north?
Yes. Firstly, what we said was that regarding security, we are going to have a surge. As you know,
Surge of what?
Of the military, of the police, and whatever. We're going to increase the figures drastically so that we can squeeze these people out, take up the spaces. When I say spaces, the forests, coastal areas, the border areas as well. When you have this, because at the moment, I make bold to say we don't have proper collaboration between the immigration and the customs and the military. Our borders are porous. I know you're going to spend money doing that. Also with technology, drones and what have you. That is that. As that is going on, the intervention you're talking about, and it's not trader money that we're talking about here. You have to begin there are 20 million children, basically, and most of them from the north, out of school. You have to begin to mop them up. We have to begin to mop them up. We have to begin to intervene in education. Now, we have a program. It is a radical one. If I get it right now, it's called the Community Participatory something committee, CPRC, that Kwankwaso has proposed in the blueprint. Now, this is so radical because it's saying that in the 8,900 and something wards, you will have these committees. Let me just rush through that because
I mean, we have to go to Abuja.
Okay, sorry. Sorry.
The out-of-school figures, very controversial. Government has said it's way less than that. It's at 12 million.
Fantastic, if it is.
And I know your candidate challenged other candidates to a
debate. Yes, he said that yesterday.
Would he be attending, perhaps if others drop out and say, well, we're busy and all of that?
No, he will. He will. Yesterday he was with the Guild of Editors. So they invited him. He went there. And I was going to say when Olumide was speaking, that his people have already issued a statement that Asiwaju is not going to be participating in any debate
so you don't
or whatever.
believe what he said?
No, Olumide is talking, he's saying what he believes in, but I'm saying that Festus had issued a statement that Asiwaju wouldn't be participating. And I'm saying that don't come and tell us about the manifesto that the purported maker of the manifesto is not willing to defend in front of Nigerians. It's as simple as that. Kwankwaso will defend anywhere.
Well, over to you, Abuja.
All right. So, Mr. Olumide, you've been found out. Why wouldn't your party defend those manifestos before Nigerians alongside other candidates in the televised debate?
Well, first of all, let me send my regards to both Mr. Doherty and Mr. Johnson. They are both fine gentlemen from illustrious families in Lagos, and I have tremendous respect for the both of them. We are in opposing political parties, and as we continue to chew over events, political debates are what they are. If you look at the U.S.
Do you believe in them? Because you talk about the U.S.
Chamberlain.
Do you believe in them a lot in the U.S.?
Chamberlain.
You mentioned the U.S. just now.
Chamberlain. You can't rush me with these questions because you just asked me a question.
I'm
but
not
you
rushing
keep
you. Time is the one rushing.
Yeah, but then you're interjecting.
We're out of time.
But you're interjecting. You've just asked me a question.
You have other two people. You have two
then
other people. You know that.
We will come back and address those issues.
Okay, so tell us,
sure.
Why will he not participate in the debate? It's straightforward.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to address before you. So, so debates are one thing. Campaigning is another thing. You'll agree with me that the responsibilities of government don't center around debating. We can continue to debate. We have major issues at stake. And our candidate prefers, we prefer to concentrate on those. The issue of debates, when they come, as of when they come, we will address them as and when.
But you just heard the gentleman talk about your party issuing a statement saying they will not participate in a debate.
Yes, that's a statement.
Even though you prefer that debate because you initially said, of course you will, because you subscribe to that kind of scenario.
Well, you're making some assumptions.
I asked you previously, and you said, of course you will participate.
Yes, I said. I'm
what am I making up?
No, you're making assumptions to the effect that that might be a blank statement indefinitely. We have 3 months towards the end of the elections. You know,
I only repeated what you said, that yes, you will.
People need to look at things in proper perspectives, and we'll get to those.
All right. I'd like to hear the viewers' perspective on what you said if we're the ones making them up. Mr. Doherty, your final word on this one. Should you be worried about the 5G, the integrity governors who call themselves Group of Five now, because they seem to be tugging at the heart of your party, because votes is the lifeblood of political parties, I reckon.
Yes, thank you very much. Before I get to that, I would like to say something which I've noticed. I've seen Ladipo on one end, and I've seen Olumide on one end, and I can tell you very much that they're struggling to defend their parties because they know they have PDP in their blood, you know, and they're both from PDP. They are extracts from PDP. I know I can see Ladipo laughing there. You understand? And we've all we all have some kind of ideology about this country, and I'm happy that they are where they are today. I'm happy that they are doing what they are doing today, because we need the new generation of politicians with good ideas to come up. Now, having said that, we were talking about the G5, you know, but before we go into that for the G5, I would also like to say this. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is an experienced politician and has gotten the experience of running this country. Full stop. Every other person has worked with Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, including Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Bola Ahmed Tinubu was in the PDP.
All right, Mr. Doherty, we need to go.
Alhaji Abubakar. Now, what I would like to say about the G5, let me quickly talk about the G5.
Oh, looks like we lost you.
You understand? And I believe that they are all going to come back and agree. Wike is going to agree with PDP because all his candidates are members of the PDP.
All right, gentlemen.
Same thing with the PSU.
We need to go. I'm afraid we're completely out of time on this one.
We're all coming in.
All right, we hear you. But we'll have to thank all of you for coming in today. Mr. Deji Doherty of the PDP, Mr. Olumide Braithwaite of the APC, and Mr. Ladipo Johnson of the NNPP. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on today. We will be back in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, you know the man, Ida Peterside. He joins us next, former Super Eagles goalie. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. We started out with my colleagues talking about how we don't seem to be feeling the buzz of this World Cup. Maybe it's us. Or is it because maybe Nigeria is not playing at this World Cup? And we thought, who knows? With time, it just might catch up. So how about you? How are you taking this all in? I know that, well, there could be a lot of buzz around you, but from what you watched, tell us about it.
Well, it's never the same. If your team qualifies, you watch with your heart. If your team does not qualify, you watch with your head. That's the difference. There is no heart, you know, whoever wins, it really doesn't matter.
But as a football person, you just want to enjoy the ambience, enjoy the World Cup, enjoy the scenario, the vibe of the World Cup. That's what we're just doing. We're just tagging along. So, yeah.
Well, pardon me. I want to jump in right into the match. Maybe my colleagues can talk about the opening ceremony.
That's what I want to talk about. Let's talk about the opening. There was an opening ceremony first before there was a match. Yes. It wasn't there. What did you make of that opening ceremony? Do you think that Qatar was really able to keep the eyes of all of the world on it while it did that opening ceremony?
It was beautiful. It's always beautiful to watch opening ceremonies. And what they did, they brought the voice, the one we call the voice. And I think he just changed, he just changed everything with his voice. I'm trying to remember his name now.
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman. You know, all we saw, we had already had before this time that it was going to be a whole lot of computerized displays, which they did. And they did a massive job. We were able to be glued to the television. It was a mixture of culture and modern, how do I say? Culture and the modern era. They tried to combine both, knowing that they come from the desert. They wanted people to see the desert life, the Arabic life, and the modern life. Good combination. You know, I enjoyed it, but I'm a football person. I'm not an entertainer. I was very focused on. I was focused on the game.
Well, I'm happy to at least to hear that you watched the opening ceremony, and I'm glad to also hear that you enjoyed it. I know you'd like to, get right into the game, that game between Ecuador and Qatar. But just a little more on the opening ceremony. I'd like to know. I mean, you've spoken about the voice being one of the major highlights for you. But do you think that the world is over the fact that Qatar got the hosting rights, especially Western countries? We saw all of the, the drama preceding the opening ceremony. Would you say that they're finally over the fact that Qatar is the one hosting this World Cup and not the other countries that bid it?
No, they will never be. You know, these Europeans and the Western world, they will never be. When we hosted in South Africa, it was the same thing. They said lions will eat people on the street, people will be robbed and heads will be cut off. They always have something to say. I just think for me, they should just calm down and let's watch football. They always do that. I was in Russia. You know, if I say this, a lot of people will not believe this. I've traveled around the nations of the world. Russia is one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to. One of the most, but they wouldn't say that. You know, the safety was paramount in Russia. We were walking on the street 2 a.m., 3 a.m. without any issues. The Western world will always want to paint every other country wrong if they're not hosting. You remember that Qatar beat the UK and they beat the United States to host. So they are so bitter and angry, but who cares? We want to talk football. We're excited about football and not their politics.
And do you think that, we know that for the fans, beer is a big part of football. The fact that,
yes,
there will be no alcohol, or at least maybe in restricted places. How is that going to work for the fans?
Yeah, I drink the beer later. They've told you, go to get your clothes. And I'm going to Qatar this night. You know, they've sent us the rules. You're going to a country. You need to obey the rules of the country. It is like if I decide to carry cocaine and get into America, you will arrest me because your law does not allow it. So we should just respect people's tradition and people's laws. If you want to drink beer, like I said, I have my the Hayat card they gave to us. They've given us the rules. The rule says in the parameter of where we're staying, there will be beers available. So I don't understand why someone cannot wait for 3 hours. If the game is over, you go back to your hotel or you go back to wherever you are lodging and beers will be available there. I don't understand it. You mustn't drink in the stadium. You don't have to get high. You need to get high on the game, not on beer.
So you can watch with your clear eyes. So for those who watched with their clear eyes yesterday,
yes,
I think you guys can get to it.
I must be clear.
That's right, guys in Lagos. Guys, what's going on? I'm sure you watched the matches, didn't you?
Well, we'll come to the match, but let's talk about the location of the match just a second. Mr. That, you know, there's a lot of things around the infrastructure that went into this. We're going to have a lot of time talking about, you know, football, the real action for some weeks to come. But there are some firsts in terms of the infrastructure for this one. That particular, should I call it a mobile stadium? How does that come across to you?
I don't know. I don't know the technology. One of the things I will do, I will go take pictures. And I think we have people that will take us around and show us what they've done. We had to put crates. I've seen a little bit of it, that they put crates together. It's technology. You know, these guys are geniuses. We need to go and learn from them how not to waste. I hear they will dismantle the stadiums and even donate some of the stadiums to people. This is what we're talking about, advancement and technology. The reason why I work for my country, Nigeria, and you see I wanted to contest, because when you have ideas, you want to bring new things and you can't, it's quite painful. Technology has moved. Our game has moved to the next level. And we need to copy. Again, I've not been there. Like I said, I'm traveling this night. It's going to be a wonderment. I want to see how these things are done. You know, I got a call from my friend, Sunday Olise, and he said, Ida, you need to be here. You need to come and see what these guys have done. The criticisms against them, for me, really does not matter. You know, we want to see what they've done. They've transformed the desert to a beautiful place to live. Things are working. They've spent $200 billion. I say it again, $200 billion to put this together. Everyone should be there to see this wonderment.
Definitely. I mean, maybe that's also another angle we need to imbibe, because spending that over the course of 10 years, over $200 billion, you wonder, how much have we spent on even sports as a whole, not even football in Nigeria? But let's talk about the match now. I mean, you can tell people on the team who didn't or who don't watch matches clearly, they love the opening ceremony and other issues. But that match, major issues came up.
Okay, please just call my question. Just tell her.
I didn't call my question. You did, so you have to deal with her. But, you know, the VAR came up, and not for good reasons. And people are wondering, is it like another version of the VAR? Now, this is a team, I'm talking about Ecuador. Nigeria played against Ecuador recently this year. Ecuador won Nigeria 1-0. And I mean, if you compare the quality, I know they don't usually do that in football, but some will say even Qatar did well, ended the match 2-0. But VAR, that conversation lingered, and perhaps will linger for longer. What did you think about that? Was that maybe, I don't know, a mistake, software issue, or what exactly?
No, we thought it was a mistake initially, but it was a great call. There are rules in football. The last man, it doesn't matter whether you're a goalkeeper or you're a player, the last man becomes the last man, right? If it's the goalkeeper had gone for the punch and the defender became the last man. So the rule says that if you are closest to the last man, it is an offside. So it doesn't matter whether it's a goalkeeper. A lot of people think because the goalkeeper went out, then it was a wrong call. It was a beautiful call. It was the right call. You could see the leg of the young man was the next to the defender. So that's what the rule says, and it was a good call. So VAR got it very right. You know, we needed to see it again to understand it, but I think they got it right. VAR has helped us a lot in this game. There are calls that have been made in the World Cup, so in games, that you would cry and you would know that these decisions are dubious. But for a World Cup like this, we want to be sure that the goals are right goals, offsides are right calls, and if a country wins the tournament, you won it rightly. And I think, again, I say it again, the VAR call was right.
So clearly, we can let that matter rest, and I'm glad you've provided some more insights to that one. Regarding the quality of that match, just quickly, I mean, saying Qatar play, yes, they didn't have quite a long time to train against Ecuador. What would you say about the quality of that team? And I also want to maybe just add this. I wonder what team you're supporting, because Nigeria is not in this game and you're traveling to Qatar. So what team are you rooting for? But speak to the quality of that match, and then Chamberlain will take it on from here.
Well, the quality was very poor for me, very poor. But you expect that. Opening ceremonies, opening games, and the finals on record have always been very poor. Why? Because the first game, you saw what happened to Qatar yesterday. They were finished. Just imagine how many sultans and alhajas and alhajis would have addressed them. You know, that the night before the game, the emir would come. The pressure would have been so unbearable. You could see they were tired. They were tired off the pitch before they played the game. It happens all the time. That's why you need a massive psychology. I'm not sure they have that kind of arrangement when you have the sultans and emir. You must listen to them. They can wake you up at 2 o'clock to address you. I think it affected them. The same thing will happen in the finals. Final games are never beautiful to watch. Why? The teams are tired before the finals. Then the pressure, they see heaven without getting to heaven. So they're already there, but they're not there. So they don't play for skill, they play for the cup. So most times the games are not decent. So we know this happens. It is when we see the third game from the group, that's when you begin to see good football. Because it now depends who qualifies to the next round. That's where the game will be settled down. Okay. We know there will be one for other teams to leave right. The World Cup. The beautiful games will begin to be played.
All right, maybe we'll hang on then, and before we just begin to get an idea of predictions as to who may breast the tape or lift the cup, but we'll hold on for that one. But we'll have to thank you very much indeed for your time here today, Ida Peterside.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, let's take a look at, and safe travels, by the way. Let's take a look at some comments coming through from you here. This first tweet is from Festus. He says, though poverty is a challenge for every country, especially now that times are hard, the high level of poverty in our country is unacceptable. Surely, FG, Social Intervention Program, have not succeeded. Next FG must come with a better and efficient benefit system.
Well, Law Alpha Cross says it's one thing to have beautiful and well-scripted manifestos by political parties, and yet another uphill task tacitly implementing them. No doubt Nigerian political parties have sound manifestos which pose to addressing varied challenges. Well, that's what Law Alpha Cross says.
Well, take a look at this one from Prof. Enakena saying, for Nigeria to evolve economically, the state government must do their part by unchaining the shackles of our local government, implementing the Orosoi report that unearths the internal rot within government and curtail the unnecessary duplication of ministries and parastatals. That Orosoi report, there's been an implementation committee, then a white paper committee. What?
And then another committee to review that. Anyway, let's just... Ed Austin says 133 million Nigerians poor. Poverty is a loyalty tool by Nigerian political elites to control a larger part of the population. Little wonder they work to increase the numbers rather than decreasing it.
Oh boy, that is not a good one, I tell you. But then that is where we draw the curtains today on the program. We do thank you all, as always, for letting us be a part of your day today. We will see you next time, tomorrow. I am Chamberlain, so have a good day.
Thank you for watching. I'm Maokbe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.